Publitarian Podcast.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ronald Johnson, Publitarian, coming at you again with another episode of Publitarian Podcast. And I am fortunate to have with me today the youngest person to run for United States Congress, Morgan Murtaugh. How are you today, Morgan?
Yes, I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No, thanks for being on. And I do have that right, correct? You are the youngest person to run for Congress.
Yes, this cycle.
Dude, that's awesome. I actually was checking out your Instagram last night, and I see that you even garnered the attention of CNN. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I did see you up there.
Yeah, unfortunately, they didn't ask to talk to me. I just found out through friends who actually watch CNN, bless their hearts. They sent me a screen grab and said, by the way, I saw they talked about you on CNN for about 20 seconds. So, yeah.
I'm sure it was very positive coverage and glowing reviews.
Oh, I'm sure, because I'm a Republican and all.
That's right. Nobody had a problem with Donald Trump either until he put an R behind his name. And then, the R stood for racist and reptile and whatever else.
Exactly.
But thank you for being on today. And you first caught my attention when you were on the Milo show months ago, and I am a Milo fan. And then when I was wanting to set up the interview with you, and I was telling my wife, who's also a millennial, about you, she was like, "Do you know who this is?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's like the youngest person to run for Congress." And she's like, "No, this is Repub Girl Problems from Twitter." And like she fangirled for a bit about that and, clued me into your old Twitter handle. But I think that is now defunct, correct?
Yes, Repub Girl Problems no longer exists. Sorry to your wife and to all the other fans out there. Repub Girl Problems is dead.
Well, I'm assuming, once you start the political life, you have to kind of, I don't know, is change the image the right word? Because I know that you're still you, but I don't know.
Oh, yeah. I'm still very much me. I'm still, I still crack jokes, and I still have a very satirical personality, but I don't think that necessarily running under a fake name like Republican Girl Problems would be beneficial to my candidacy. So,
right.
Yeah.
And speaking of your candidacy, I am interested to know, and then my audience will be as well, what got you initially interested in politics?
Back in 2008, during Obama's first run for president, I started by volunteering for McCain. It was like not on an official basis, but I helped McCain out, and then that's was my first introduction into politics. Mm-hmm. And just the sheer vitriol from friends and family. When my mom and I stood on the street corner of our church with a sign that said McCain Palin, 2008, and everyone was yelling at us. This was outside of my church, by the way. This is where I grew up.
Wow.
I've known these people for a long time, and someone called the cops on us. And so the cop was like, "You're totally allowed to be here. This is public property. You can stand here." So it was funny. That was my first introduction into the partisan side of politics and how people get so fired up if they disagree with you.
Right. And you saw all that vitriol and you were like, "I got to get a piece of that."
I was like, "All right, guys. Let's stop overreacting here," because I was very young. I was 15 years old. I didn't really know where I stood yet. I was still trying to figure all that out. But because of how like violently angry they were towards me. I was 15. I was like, okay, now I need to check out the Republican platform, because if this is what it's like, if people are so angry at me for like holding a sign, I wonder what they would do to me if I actually agree with them. And then here we are. I actually agree with Republicans on most issues.
And I think that's what's happening in this culture war that we're seeing now. There are so many people that have either been apolitical or on the fence, and the vitriol, as you call it, rightly so, from the left side of the aisle, I think is pushing people over to the right. And I think that's why we're seeing the surge that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's what happened to me, and lo and behold, it's happening now. That's the whole hashtag walk away movement.
Yeah, and that's really gained a lot of traction. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos and stories of people that have just chosen to walk away, and not your typical what you would think would be a quote-unquote Republican either. I mean, like the guy that started it, I think is a gay hairdresser from New York, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and like it's funny because they're helping us change our own narrative.
Yeah, I know. It's like, thanks, guys. Thanks for helping out with that.
Appreciate it. We need you.
Yeah, we couldn't have done it without you. So you're running for the 53rd Congressional District, and I'm wondering what your platform is going to be, what you're thinking of bringing to the table, what are you going to do differently? Just expound on that however you want.
Well, there's a lot of opportunity down in San Diego to create jobs. I mean, to put in a plant to purify water. Like there's so much opportunity down here, but because California is California, it's really hard on the state level to get anything done. So, I mean, DC writes all the checks to get these things going, and I think that if we start getting people on the federal level involved, I mean, people like Susan Davis, who I'm running against, and Juan Vargas, who's in the district right next to me. I mean, these people haven't done anything except keep their seat warm. And so I really just want to start by getting things done and seeing how we can grow San Diego's economy, for starters. Second, I really securing the border is very, very important to me, because we are in a border city, and it's not about immigration reform. It's about, everyone listening to your podcast probably agrees with me here. It's about national security.
Right.
So I definitely securing our border, keeping our border patrol agents safe, and keeping Americans safe. That's another huge issue for me.
Well, you actually swerved me into the next question. I was going to ask you about where you stood on the border wall. I mean, I had an assumption, but so now I know.
Yeah, to me, though, it's much more than just building a wall, because there's so much that goes into it. And I don't think people realize the intricacies of what's going on down there. And in San Diego, we need to clean up the border. The Tijuana River Valley is so toxic and it's so disgusting. We need to clean that up, and that starts with California. We need to step up and do that. And so that's one thing. Then we also we need better technology down there. They have Vietnam War level era technology down there.
Oh, wow.
And then we also, it's really bad. They need better technology. We have drones now. Like, why can't we get some of those on the border? Come on. And then we also have there's not only technology, but there's also just infrastructure, as in roads, and like better paved roads for them to get from point A to point B faster and safer. I mean, better fencing. It goes much more. It goes way beyond just a wall.
And I'm glad I got your take on that, because one of the big reasons I wanted to have you on the podcast is, like I said, I'm an East Coaster, but a lot of my listeners are West Coasters. A lot of people I interview are from California, and especially one of the guys that like loves my podcast is Bay Area, and it's like, you know, I joke and I'm like, I didn't know there were any conservatives in the Bay Area, but so this is good. This is why I wanted to get your take on this. And so I'm assuming by what you told me, like you held a sign for the 2008 election, that you grew up in a conservative household, and that's what kind of at least gave you a foundation, even though you were kind of forging your own path initially, right?
Yeah. My parents are pretty conservative, but they raised us in more of like a open-minded household. Like we watched not only Fox News, we watched CNN, MSNBC. We kind of flipped through to see to get the different opinions, and we all kind of just leaned towards conservatism. And I think that's what happens, though, when you're given all the options. You choose the right one.
Right. Oh, speaking of news, I'm assuming you don't have time for this anymore, but didn't you anchor for One American News?
Yes, I was a political commentator and talk show host at One American News, but I took a leave of absence to run for Congress. Okay,
and now for the hard-hitting questions. The gotcha journalism.
Okay.
On your Instagram, you have this beautiful dog, dear. And I would like to know more about him.
That beautiful dog is actually scratching his belly right now while he sleeps, and he's kicking me as we speak. His name is Maverick. He will be 7 months old on September 2nd.
Aww.
He is quite the character, huge personality, total brat. We need to get him trained ASAP. But yeah, he is very sweet, very loving. He's just not very good with strangers.
Oh, I gotcha. And is he like a mixed breed? Like, what is he exactly?
He's a German Shepherd Catahoula mix. So he gets his shape and his everything from German Shepherd, but his coloring comes from Catahoula.
Yeah, such a cute dog, and I noticed you did a photo shoot with him, and there's no shame in that game because I've done a photo shoot with my dog, too. He's a French Bulldog. I've put a bandana on him and had a professional photographer come out. So I feel like we have a kindred spirit here.
The professional photographer is actually his godmom. It's my brother's girlfriend, and she does it for free because she's obsessed with my dog.
It's such a beautiful dog. And then the last hard-hitting question, and then I'll let you go. And this was a question that my wife told me to ask you. And she was like, I'll quote her exactly. She was like, okay, I know Morgan is half Mexican, so is it going to be racist for you to ask her what her favorite flavor of Taki is? And I'm like, I don't know, so I'll ask her.
I don't have a favorite flavor of Taki. I like the original, I guess.
You're an original
My little
Taki
cousin's
girl.
next to me. I can ask her, what's your favorite flavor of Taki?
My
she
wife
says the guacamole. My little cousin says the guacamole
Okay,
one.
guacamole, got it. So I'll let her know, because my wife, who is very white and very ginger, has become like a Taki connoisseur.
Okay.
So now I know. That was all the hard-hitting questions I had for you. I just wanted to learn a little bit about you and your candidacy, and that's all I have for you. Anything else you'd like to cover, or any other final thoughts you'd like to leave?
Well, if anyone listening wants to help us out with making some phone calls or donating anything at all, you can find more information at morganmurtaugh.com. Murtaugh spelled like lethal weapons, guys. So, yeah.
I love it. Okay, thanks for being on with us today, Morgan.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. And that will do it for us at Publitarian Podcast. We'll see you guys next time. Take care.
Listening to Publitarian Podcast. Copyright 2018.